On a quiet morning in early June 2004, a bulldozer rumbled down the streets of Granby, Colorado. This bulldozer, however, was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Heavily armored and resembling a moving fort, the giant beast smashed into City Hall and began to tear the small town of Granby to pieces. Police found their rifles, shotguns, and handguns to be completely ineffective against the heavily armored behemoth, and the Colorado governor made preparations to order the National Guard to send an Apache attack helicopter to destroy what would become known as the Killdozer. 3 years before the armored Rampage, Marvin Heemeyer was a well-liked and affable man who owned and operated his own muffler repair shop. Having bought the land on which his shop was built back in 1992, Heemeyer had recently agreed to sell the land to a concrete company, which was looking to build a new plant in the area. Despite the town's approval, as the plant would bring many new jobs to the area, the negotiations, however, had been difficult, and Heemeyer and the concrete company failed to come to an agreeable price for the land over and over again. Originally having bought the land for $42,000, Heemeyer agreed to sell the land for $250,000, only to change his mind and increase the price to $375,000. After more back-and-forth negotiations, Heemeyer changed his mind again and increased the price to nearly $1 million. The concrete company balked at this ridiculous sum, though, claiming that Heemeyer was simply being greedy and unreasonable. Appealing directly to the Granby Town Council, negotiations broke down completely when the city decided to approve the construction of the concrete plant on the land next to Heemeyer's muffler shop instead. Infuriated at losing the deal completely, Heemeyer appealed to the city council various times, claiming that the construction blocked access to his shop, which was proven incorrect. Instead of getting the approval appealed and a deal back on the table for himself, all Heemeyer managed to do was bring a city investigation of his property down on himself, which revealed that he had been dumping waste from an improvised septic tank directly into an irrigation ditch in lieu of paying to be hooked up to the city's sewer line. The city fined Heemeyer $2,500 for this and various other violations, and refused to hear any more appeals over the construction of the concrete plant. Heemeyer's greed, it seems, didn't pay off, and worse, it actually ended up costing him. This was the breaking point for Heemeyer, and something in his mind snapped. Rather than go on a shooting rampage, though, Heemeyer had other plans, and showing incredible patience, took a full year and a half to put his revenge plan into action. The city of Granby would pay, but clearly, a man of great ambition, Heemeyer made sure that his revenge would come in the most grandiose form possible. First, Heemeyer leased his business to a trash company, though he would end up selling it and the land it sat on several months before the ultimate rampage. A few years later, Heemeyer had bought a Komatsu D355A bulldozer, which others in the town believed had been bought to construct an access road to his muffler shop. The same road he was now falsely claiming to be blocked by the concrete plant's construction. With the money earned by leasing his business, Heemeyer purchased large amounts of concrete and tool steel from an automotive dealer in Denver. Over the course of months and with the help of a homemade crane, Heemeyer built sheets of steel and attached them to the bulldozer, pouring concrete in between the sheets to make homemade composite armor that was in places over 1 foot thick. The armor covered the entire cab and engine compartment and even parts of the treads, making the bulldozer highly resistant to explosives and completely impervious to small arms fire. To maintain the integrity of the armor, Heemeyer fashioned a video camera system for navigation rather than put holes in the vehicle's armor, which could become an easily exploited weakness. The video cameras were linked to 2 monitors which were affixed to the vehicle's dashboard, and each camera was protected on the outside by 3-inch bulletproof plastic. The camera housings were even fitted with compressed air nozzles that could be used to blow dust away from the cameras and maintain good visuals. The ingenious system mirrored the digital navigation system of many modern armored tanks and was made completely by hand in Heemeyer's shed. Once sealed inside, Heemeyer would be safe from anything but very high-caliber military weapons. Safe in his steel and concrete encased cocoon, Heemeyer would be free to rampage throughout the town as he pleased. For a year and a half, Heemeyer labored inside his garage to build his formidable Killdozer, and incredibly, was never discovered. Heemeyer himself was shocked at the fact that nobody ever discovered his plans, not just because of the sheer amount of metal and concrete he was buying and shipping, but because on several occasions, individuals had come into his shop and seen the giant metal and concrete beast in various stages of construction. According to writings discovered later by the police, Heemeyer wrote, "It's interesting to observe that I was never caught. This was a part-time project of 1.5-year time period," writing about his surprise in not being discovered, even with various individuals individuals entering his shop and seeing the monster in construction, he said somehow their vision was clouded. Heemeyer had found a reason for why his visitor's vision had been clouded, however. Recording in various audio tapes that God had built him for the job, he said that it was God's plan that he had not been married or had a family so that he could be in a position to carry out such an attack. He believed God would bless him to get the machine finished, drive it, and do the stuff that I have to do. He went on to say, God blessed me in advance for the task I am about to undertake. It is my duty. God has asked me to do this. It's a cross that I'm going to carry, and I'm carrying it in God's name. Many other men and women have heard their own callings from God to feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, aid the poor. Heemeyer's grand crusade from God himself was to level the buildings of a small municipal government. On June 4, 2004, God apparently gave Heemeyer the go-ahead to start leveling the town of Granby. First, he drove the Killdozer through the wall of his former muffler shop and then straight through the concrete plant still in construction. Trying to stop the giant Killdozer, Cody Dochef jumped into a wheel tractor scraper to try to head off the metal beast and stop the Rampage tearing through his concrete plant, only to be fired on by Heemeyer from gun ports built into the Killdozer. Ultimately, in an epic battle between heavy machinery, Dochef's tractor scraper was no match for the overpowered beast, and the Killdozer pushed it aside and continued the demolition of the concrete plant. Next, Heemeyer turned his rage on Town Hall, driving it straight through the building and causing catastrophic damage. Next, he turned on a local newspaper office, which had run negative editorials on Heemeyer's greed and the failed bid to sell this land, plus the ensuing denials of his appeals. Trashing the newspaper's offices, he then headed for a former judge's widow's home, taking out the small house and several other homes in the process. Despite appearing like a random rampage, every single business or home targeted by Heemeyer had some connection to his fight against the zoning committee. Police tried several times to stop the rampage, but shotgun and rifle fire simply bounced off the composite armor of the Killdozer. Changing their tactics, they targeted the video cameras, hoping to force Heemeyer to end his rampage by blinding him. Yet still, their bullets were unable to penetrate the 3 inches of bulletproof plastic encasing each camera. For his part, Heemeyer returned fire with his semi-automatic rifle through various gun ports, but generally ignored the police's attempts to stop him. At one point, police officer Glenn Traynor rushed the Killdozer and climbed atop it, hoping to find a way into the beast and stop Heemeyer. Yet there was no way in because Heemeyer had built an exterior armored shell that completely encased the Killdozer, lowering it onto the dozer by crane back in his shop. Heemeyer knew that as soon as the armored plating was lowered into place, he would never be coming out of the machine alive. With options running out and fearful that the unstoppable Killdozer would be turned on Granby civilians, State Governor Bill Owens made preparations for the National Guard to dispatch an Apache attack helicopter to neutralize the vehicle. Armed with Hellfire missiles, Apache helicopters are the U.S. Army's premier anti-tank weapon, with a single missile easily able to penetrate the top armor of any tank in the world. Afraid that the collateral damage from a Hellfire strike would endanger more lives, though, the plans were switched for a 2-man team to be dispatched with a Javelin anti-tank missile system. Fortunately for Granby, though, Heemeyer's Killdozer had suffered some damage to its radiator and was leaking coolant. Then, as the Killdozer leveled a hardware store, one of its treads fell into a small basement inside the store, effectively leaving the Killdozer stuck. Accepting his fate and knowing his rampage was at an end, Heemeyer killed himself shortly after with a single gunshot to the head. Police would go on to use explosives to try and remove the armored plating, but even after 3 tries with high explosives failed to make a dent in the monster, they opted instead to use an oxyacetylene cutting torch. Hours later, the authorities finally managed to penetrate the hull of the Killdozer and retrieve Heemeyer's body at 2 a.m. The Killdozer would ultimately be scrapped across several different junkyards to prevent souvenir collectors from seizing pieces of the now infamous homemade tank. Granby's rampage would last for 2 hours and 7 minutes, cause an estimated $7 million in damage, and destroy or damage 13 buildings. Incredibly though, the only fatality would be Heemeyer. How could local police hope to stop a giant armored bulldozer? Should the army have gotten involved sooner? And if you like this video, make sure you check out our other video, What If You Could Remember Everything and Never Forget Anything? And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content.